Hello, IT enthusiasts. Welcome to another episode of My Computer Careers Get Into IT Live, where we do just that. We get into all things IT. You may see a familiar face with us today. We are once again joined by Dr. James Stanger from CompTIA, and we are going to have certainly a fun chat around all things CompTIA and the courses offered in My Computer Career. But before I do that, I just want to say, as always, Dr. Stanger, thanks for joining us.
Hey, man, it's good to be here. Thanks.
How are things in your world? We talked a little bit about this. James is traveling all around the world at all times. Where did you just get back from? Where are you heading to?
Let's see. I just got back from Indonesia and Malaysia. So it's Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia and Jakarta in Indonesia. And then I'm heading to Atlanta for the CompTIA Partner Summit next week. And after that, I'll be heading to Australia. So they keep me moving around. It's a lot of fun.
So when James says, when his title that he is a chief technology evangelist, it couldn't be more true. He evangelizes around the world on the benefits of CompTIA and their course offerings. So it's no better person to talk to than James. So again, thanks for joining us. All right, folks. As always, we have Patricia out kind of moderating. We have the comment section. We are going to, the purpose of this chat, we have 30 minutes. So the purpose of this chat is just kind of to walk you through some of the courses that are offered at My Computer Career. But even if you don't go to My Computer Career, this is going to help you better understand some CompTIA course offerings, how to navigate those courses, what to expect, and then kind of what roles they'll prepare you for, and how you're ready to go out into your IT careers. So I think it's going to be beneficial for a lot of folks, and I'm really looking forward to digging in. So if you have comments, throw them in the chat, and we will do our level best to address all of those things. Awesome. So happy Friday, and why don't we dig in? Sound good?
Sounds good to me, man. Happy Friday to you too.
All right. I'm going to do the official introduction because that's what we do around here. James Stanger, PhD, is an authority in security, open source, network administration, and IT education. He has consulted with corporations, governments, and learning institutions worldwide for more than 20 years. He is also an award-winning author and blogger. All right. So for those who don't know, throughout our 5 programs at My Computer Career, which as a reminder is the ITSA program, Cybersecurity Specialist, Cybersecurity Engineer, Cyber Warrior program, and then all the way up to our Associate program, we offer 5 CompTIA courses. That's A+, Security+, Network+. How do you say it? You say CISA or CISA?
I say CYSA plus is what I say.
Okay.
CompTIA CYSA plus. That's what I say.
That's what we're going to say today. CYSA plus. And is it CASP plus?
That's right. Yeah. I say CSP plus, which soon will be called Security X. We're doing a renaming of that. So if you see Security X, it's CASP plus renamed.
I read about that. Exciting stuff. We'll talk about that a little at the end as well. All right. All right. So if you don't mind, James, why don't we just begin at the beginning? Our ITSA program is our foundational program, and it's really designed to help folks get into the IT industry. So in that program, you're going to take A+, Security+, Network+. Right. Do you mind just giving folks kind of an overview of those courses if possible? I know it's 3 courses, but do you mind?
You bet. You bet. I was talking recently to a person who's kind of become a friend of mine. His name is Mike Garrity over in the state of New Jersey. And he said he spends up to 50% of his time when it comes to new employees, teaching them the foundations of networking, TCP handshake, how DNS works. Do you know what recursion is in DNS, for example? I bring this up because it's all about foundations, and A+, Network+, Security+, gives you that foundation that you need, so that you don't fall into that typical demographic, I'll call it demographic, that typical bucket that a lot of hiring managers kind of see when it comes to new hires. So A+, you could look at it in 2 different ways. One, you could say A+ is help desk, service desk, right? The other way you could look, and those are job roles. Those are serious job roles. Each of our certs is based on a job role. Sure. You could also look at A+, though, Aaron, as it teaches the endpoints. And by endpoints, I mean how computers work or how devices work. So these devices, whether they be your mobile phone, your PC, servers, routers, things that are at the edge, operational technology. It teaches all that. So there's the A plus thing. Is that kind of what you were looking for, Aaron? And
absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's exactly right. Please.
Okay. With Network Plus, then it teaches how all those endpoints talk to each other. So I mentioned, I think earlier, the TCP handshake. So that's TCP is a protocol. We're using it right now, right? We're using a lot of protocols right now with this conversation, right? Do you understand the foundations of how those work and how routers talk to each other and update each other's router tables, how DNS works? You'll get a bit of that in A+, but you really get hit hard with the protocol side of things with Network Plus. With Security Plus, then it basically adds on, you could say, the CIA triad to all of that. And the CIA triad, that's not the US CIA, that's the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So being able to say, well, okay, things are talking to each other. We got endpoints on the network. Are they able to use encryption? Are they able to withstand attacks? So we're starting to add things like resilience to that. So those would be the big three, I think. And each of these things is created 2 job roles. We do a job task analysis for each of those certs, for any of the certs that we have. And the idea is that the result is not just James's opinion or a few people's opinion. It's literally the opinions, the experience of thousands of working IT professionals for each of those types of certs.
Yeah, and that's something that if you're not familiar with CompTIA, to really pay attention to. You know, this isn't just some fly-by-the-night organization. This is the organization that spends a lot of time kind of putting these programs together. So, James, you touched on it. Thank you for that.
Sure.
You touched on it a bit. I think it's fairly obvious, but why are these good courses for early learners?
You know, the reason, there are a couple of reasons why I think they're really good for early learners is that I think let me see, I'll say it this way. There are some people who would say, well, with the advent of artificial intelligence and the hyper automation that's going on, really cool stuff, with the advent of the cloud, that we wouldn't need to know the basics anymore. After all, don't computers take care of basic things so that human beings can do additional things? And that's certainly the case. But here's the point. The more sophisticated a system gets, the more sophisticated the breakdown. Okay. Complex systems break down in complex ways. That means that we need individuals to understand the steps of troubleshooting, for example. And I think that's really one of the critical things is how good a troubleshooter are you? Do you know the methodologies? So when it comes to understanding, let's say A+, I think one of the main things that it does is it gives you a sense of curiosity, or to put it another way, if you are curious about how this stuff works to get underneath the hood, it satiates your curiosity and it turns what I would say your curiosity into a career. And I think one of the things to think about is that as you start a career or start upskilling yourself, if you already know a bit and you're upskilling yourself, it's really important to get what I would call the horizon of expectations of all of IT, which is a fancy way of saying, there are probably 4 pillars or 4 ways to look at IT. There's the infrastructure, you know, the cloud, endpoints, servers, the hardware, the software.
Sure.
There's that. Then there's security, then there's data, and then there's programming. What interests you? And what's cool about programs like such as A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, it basically allows people to step back and go, okay, I can see how all these things dance together. I can also see what happens when the dance breaks down.
Yeah, I have an idea. I live in this world, and I have for several years now, not as long as you have. And hearing you describe just those 3 courses, it brings so much clarity, and it helps me better understand, why they are foundational and why they are in that program. So it's awesome, and I love turn your curiosity into a career. I may steal that.
Oh, go ahead, man. Go ahead anytime.
Yeah. And just so I came to mind as you were talking about, we're talking about early learners taking A+, Network Plus, Security Plus. We had a conversation recently, and I can't remember who it was with on this program. And that person said, I find myself going back, been doing it for a while, but I find myself going back to A+, and what I learned there when I'm in a pickle to help me through it, because you just learn so much.
It's what's that? There's an old book, probably way too old for anybody to know it or anything. What is it? Everything I learned in kindergarten or something like that. Those foundational kind of principles, right? And the foundations of troubleshooting are found, within A+, and those things are always going to stay with you. Whenever I ask CIOs, CISOs around the world, what are some characteristics that make an IT professional, successful? Number one lately they've been saying is curiosity. I've gotten that from Nashville to Jakarta to Warsaw, Poland to London. Curiosity. And I think it also has to do with the ability to ask, that means asking good informed questions and kind of a certain humility that you have. It's like, well, what's going on? Let me see if I can listen to the situation and figure it out. Because if you don't, the situation kind of becomes the boss. That's not a good. If you listen to the situation, kind of get a feel for it, and you have an empathy for all the elements that could be going wrong, that's what A+ teaches you, and it gets you there, and it gets you into an area where you can understand what a system is telling you when it's malfunctioning.
It's a beautiful thing. Be curious, folks. Be curious. Take that away from this, if nothing else.
ABC, right? It's always be closing, I guess, was in that 80s movie or what 90s movie?
Glengarry Ross.
There you go. Yeah. I think it's always be curious for me.
Yeah. Us old guys are sounding old right now. Nobody has any idea what we're talking about. Yeah. All right. So just to get a bit more into the weeds then, and it's a good transition because you were talking about this. You talked about what folks should expect to learn in those 3 courses. Is there any more detail that we need to go into there? Do you think we covered it appropriately?
Probably covered it, but like A+ will teach you what a MAC address is, machine address code, right? The reason why a MAC address is so cool is because that's really how computers talk to each other. They tend not to talk to each other as much with IP addresses, which is very Network+. So Network+ will teach you IP addressing, the difference between IPv4 and IPv6. A+ will teach you things about storage. Why is it that, at least traditionally, why a traditional hard disk can be used a certain way, to store data, but you'd want a solid state disk when you're transferring data back and forth. It's the nuances like that. And I think nuance is a good word. I think when it comes to A+, Network+, Security+, or any of the certs, it's not so much the meat and potatoes that you learn. You could probably learn those anywhere. I think that it's the nuances that you pick up, the light and shade, as it were. When you see this thing happening in action, when you actually get hands-on with it. And I think that's one thing that we pride ourselves at CompTIA is it's not just acronym memorization stuff. Right. You've got to do it. Right. And I think that's where the nuances and the real skills that make you attractive in the marketplace come in.
Okay. All right. So again, thanks for that. But the reality is, no matter how you're learning in IT, no matter how you're learning these courses, whether it's, through My Computer Career, where you have a little more support, whether you're doing it on your own, whether you're doing it through whatever the case may be. However you're learning, at some point, you're going to struggle a little bit to learn concepts. And it's just, it happens. We see it. It's a reality of IT, and it's a reality of learning these concepts that can come at you fast, come at you quickly. So is there any point in any or all of these courses, these certifications, where people are more likely to get stuck or struggle with concepts?
Yeah, very much so. I think it's when it comes time to understand how those concepts really do work. Technology is always going to remain an abstract and strange thing unless you apply it. And I know that sounds really obvious, but it seems to me that unless you actually say, well, okay, there's IPv4 and IPv6, or you mentioned DNS, James. What does that really mean? Well, if you really apply it and make it happen. So one of the things that happens, for example, when you're learning about DNS, it is possible these days. It wasn't so much possible when I was learning it, but now it is possible. You can go and download VirtualBox, right? And if you don't know what VirtualBox is, it basically allows your computer to launch operating systems just like you would launch a web browser or an email client or Slack or something. It makes it, in a sense, that easy. And you can go in and create your own DNS server. It's not that hard. So what happens when people get stuck is they get information overload, but they don't have a practical overload. In other words, they don't have an overload of practicing. It's kind of like, imagine if you learned about jogging all the elements of jogging, from the right kinds of shoes to socks to the stuff to wear. And you just talked about it all day long. Well, get out and run. Then you find out real quick what shin splints are or what have you, right? I think it's the practical element. I think the other element that eludes people is once they learn, they think they have to do it on their own. The rugged individualist thing, right? That's tough. That's really tough for me. I have to learn with somebody. So I always will grab somebody that will help me learn, right? And I always will get a mentor. So to me, those are the ways to get past that. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it makes a ton of sense. Fantastic advice. Learn from others as well. Lean into your peers, and we'll talk about some of those alternate pathways as well, or alternate ways to learn outside of just my computer career or anywhere that's going to help you along the way. So I think that's fantastic advice and very much appreciated. So I think that covers. The next question was about if somebody's stuck, how do you navigate that? I think we just appropriately hit that.
Get with your LinkedIn network. If you are more or less by yourself, get a LinkedIn network going and ask them questions. Don't feel funny about asking silly questions or whatever. I've often been accused of geez, James, you ask questions, no problem. You don't worry if somebody thinks you're dumb. It's like, well, if you're dumb, you're dumb. And I am. So I just love to ask questions because it helps me understand things. So
and just to go a bit further, I know that a lot of our students, when they get into a cohort, they set up Discord groups so that they can get in and talk. They talk among themselves, and they, when they struggle, they lean on each other. And I think that's an awesome idea. So, same thing, get in there and just consult with whomever you can. Yeah. All right. I know this is a bit of a loaded question, but you talked about it, so it leads right into roles. What roles will folks be equipped to handle, with continued learning, obviously, by just earning those certifications, those 3?
A+, Network Plus, Security Plus.
Yes, sir.
So things such as a help desk technician. You can become a service desk person. Basically, the beginnings of becoming a network administrator, somebody who works on routers, who solves problems if there's a routing protocol not behaving as they should, if the updates aren't happening, things like that. The administration of various services, for example, DNS, DHCP. And even though a lot of those things are done auto-magically these days, when they, creating and planning those things is still a thing. Also, you could start talking about cloud administrator. Also, security administrator, the idea of helping organizations get an encryption scheme going and making sure that's happening. Authentication, the beginnings of understanding identity access management, not the sophisticated side of it. Right. You need to learn more, but it allows you to support all of those elements. So from beginning to advanced help desk all the way through to understanding security administration.
Okay. So let's jump into some more advanced learning, which you just mentioned.
Sure, man.
In our cybersecurity specialist CSS program and our cyber warrior programs, we offer one of the certs we offer is CYSA Plus.
Yeah.
What is it? Why do we deliver the course in those programs?
CYSA Plus is basically something that teaches you how to become a security administrator. Security analyst. Sorry about that. It helps you become a security analyst. Security analysts are often called blue teamers. You could look at it in terms of defense, right? I think there was somebody over at Microsoft, I forget his name, who basically said about 5 years ago, we shouldn't be thinking of the we shouldn't be thinking of the defender's dilemma. The defender's dilemma is usually expressed in the cliched form of, well, all it takes is someone to click on one bad link and the quarterback is toast, right? Well, if you think about from a security analytics perspective, think about the attacker's dilemma, the hacker's dilemma. Think of all the steps that the hacker has to do in order to be successful. A good security analyst is able to identify what each of those steps are and what the hacker's personality or signature is. So it's a defensive blue team as opposed to the red team, which is pen testers, but blue team way of saying, I know how they're going to come at me and I know what they sound like and I can find it. So that's basically what CYSA Plus will do. It also teaches a good foundation, and even a little bit more than that, about incident response. Okay. That if there's some sort of, whether it be a chronic incident, in other words, chronic weaknesses going on, or an acute, hey, here's an attack, here's ransomware or whatever, we know how to respond to that attack.
So CYSA Plus sounds incredibly cool.
Yeah.
But I also know from chatting with folks, or I think from chatting with folks in this program and otherwise, that it can be a tricky one to test for. Is that the case, and why is that?
We don't, one of the things that we do not do is we do not, what's the word? We do not, how should I put this? We don't create trick questions. We're really good at with our what's called a psychometric analysis to make sure that we focus on tough questions, but not tricky ones. But the reason why CYSA Plus can be challenging is because most people don't think about what it means to, how should I put this? They don't really know what an attack looks like when you're listening to it. A lot of people can say, well, I know how to form an attack. I can go to Kali Linux and use Metasploit and use one of the thousands of attacks there, vectors, and create a reverse shell or something like that. But do you know what a reverse shell looks like? So basically, you're kind of applying the Braille system to something. You're really looking at indicators of compromise and indicators of attack from a very, how should I put it, uninformed perspective. That doesn't mean you don't know what's going on. It means that you have to figure out what those signatures are. It makes it tough. You have to kind of, it's almost like looking at things in a mirror view. You know what I mean? You ever done that? You look at something that's kind of, everything's reversed and you're trying to figure out how it goes. That's kind of what it's like to begin that world. But after a while, once you get, you catch on to it, you have no problem.
Excellent description, James. Braille system.
Yeah, kind of like that.
That's good. All right. So does the advice on navigating CYSA Plus differ from the advice on navigating the other foundational courses?
Good question. One of the things that CYSA Plus is really going to require is for you to have a really strong understanding of those foundations. If you don't understand the TCP handshake or how HTTP or various protocols work, then how would you be able to listen in on them? And how would you be able to identify, oh, there's a version of HTTP that is not behaving the same way as, say, how Google would use it with their browser, or how Firefox might use it with their browser, or how Windows supports it. So if you don't have the foundations, it'll be difficult. If you have the foundations, you'll be fine.
Okay. All right. And the roles available with CYSA Plus would be?
SOC analyst, security operations center analyst would be one of the main ones that you'd find when it comes to CYSA Plus. Also, incident response analyst, a little bit of compliance in there, but not as much. Compliance analyst could benefit from that. Another one that you can see is the concept of a threat hunter, somebody who understands what it means to go in and investigate what a threat looks like. But a threat hunter is a combination of what I mentioned, blue team, or the defensive or the security analyst side, and combined with a pen tester, which can be seen as part of a red team.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. Why don't we move on to the final cert that we're going to talk about for the purposes of our chat?
Sure.
Is obviously CASP Plus.
Yes.
We offer this in our cybersecurity engineer program, which is CSE, which is our third most advanced program. It follows CSS. So what is CASP all about?
We basically created that because we got two types of phone calls, and I'll call it phone calls, but two types of input from the industry. And one was governments were basically saying, we need to do instant deployments. And these deployments have to be where we are going to put up a network in some sort of environment where it wasn't before. And that environment could be a sandy beach or a jungle or a desert or some sort of urban environment. And we need to create that secure network right away. Militaries will use the term mission partner environment. I think I got that term right. In other words, let's say I'm Germany and you're the United States. We need to be able to combine our networks in secure ways so that we don't violate protocols, but we can also communicate well. So CSP Plus was created. Okay, we can help you, militaries around the world, do that. So that's one of the ways it was. But we also got phone calls from industry, banks, who basically said, hey, we need to set up networks where they weren't before, where they used to be jungles and used to be, or urban environments and everything. So they were, private sector and public sector were really asking for the same thing. So CSP Plus is very good at identifying how to create secure networks and also how to identify complex threats on those networks and how to overcome them.
Okay. And is the exam tough, appropriately tough, like CYSA?
It is. It's a tough one. I tell you, CSP Plus exam, it's not for the faint of heart, as I would say. What it is, it's I would say it's tough but fair, because we listen very carefully to make sure that there's a minimum level of professionalization for any of our certs. And so if you're below that, then you don't have that knowledge. If you're above that, you have that. And let's put it this way. These exams are designed so that if you have sufficient exposure to that world and work in that world of creating sophisticated networks for CSP Plus, or in the world of pen testing for Pen Test Plus, or in the world of blue teaming and defense and analytics for CYSA Plus, if you've been in that world for the sufficiently long, you may not even necessarily have to study for that exam. You know what I mean? Because you're living it. There might be areas where you're weak. And usually it takes the place of, oh, geez, I should have known that. I know that. I should have studied another week longer and I would have had that, or whatever. That's kind of how these exams are designed. And we're very careful to make sure that they're fair and repeatable and transparent, so you know exactly where things are. It's fun to see that. So CSP Plus is definitely for the person who, instead of going into management, a lot of people, when they're in cybersecurity for a while, they drift on into management, which is groovy. That's fine. But some people want to stay at that hands-on, I want to use the mouse and stay at the keyboard and take a look at how to either design networks or how to attack those design networks. CSP Plus is perfect for that. And it's pretty tough.
So, and this is what I've been hearing from you throughout, just for folks who are watching, don't memorize concepts, learn them.
Yeah. Great way to put it. It's all of that in the practice. If you just memorize the concepts, I think the questions will come across to you as, oh man, there's more than one correct answer. But if you're a practitioner in this, and this is the key thing, if you're a practitioner in this thing, you will understand the nuances and say, oh yeah, I can see why this choice is a more, how should I put it, appropriate answer. And remember, with CompTIA, it's not just A, B, C, D questions. Those are appropriate in various situations. We also have performance-based items. And that's what I mean by practical or praxis. And I think that's the really important thing here.
Got it. Okay. Roles with CASP Plus?
Roles, Threat Hunter would definitely be one in there. Advanced Incident Responder would be one there. Also, you're architecting, security architect, the actually creating and reviewing secure networks and secure cloud implementations. So you're the person who, once you can see, if somebody's saying, here's what we're going to be setting up, we're going to use AWS SageMaker. That's a for artificial intelligence, right? Okay. We're going to get that going, and we're going to use this S3 bucket for storage and all these different things. We're going to use a data lake. A CASP Plus person can go in there and help set that up, but also start kind of anticipating some of the issues. Like, well, I see the form of encryption you're planning on there. Is that high enough? Right? Post-quantum encryption is coming to us, but before that happens, are you using symmetric key and asymmetric key encryption properly? Are you choosing the proper forms? Once you use asymmetric key encryption, there are various algorithms that you could use within that, and various symmetric key algorithms you can use within that. Do you know why you would use that? If you're doing encryption in a situation where there's high read-write, there are forms of encryption, reading and writing going on. There are forms of encryption that are better to use because they have less overhead, less bandwidth. It's the details like that that begin to matter, especially when you're securing elements in clouds and data centers.
Okay, so we've gone through kind of the courses. We've gone through how to navigate those courses. Maybe an overview of the best way to learn, and some of the roles that folks are going to be prepared for. That was the goal. I really wanted to tap in and let folks have a broader understanding of what it is that you offer and why we have so many folks invested in offering those courses. And I threw this question in here kind of selfishly because I'm curious. Just two more questions here. I promise we'll get you out.
That's all good.
How important is taking those final tests to get certified? And there's a reason I'm asking, like I mentioned. We have students, a percentage of students who will go through and complete a 7-month program and then miss the window or whatever window we have to take that exam. So, you know, the knowledge, but don't necessarily have the certification. I don't know if you've seen that elsewhere or if this is the perfect, you know, question for you, but I guess how important is taking those tests to get certified?
It's a good question. Yeah, we see that happening at times. And and is the question why that happens, or is the question kind of why is that a bad idea?
Why is that a bad idea is what I was thinking.
You know, the reason why I think it's a bad idea to do that is because I'll use an analogy. In cybersecurity, often we'll use the term an indicator of compromise. In other words, if we go in and we're doing some sort of network forensic analysis or some sort of, you know, well, how did this vector turn into a vector? How did it happen? We look for little indicators of compromise. And that could be something left in memory, right? That's like, okay, I can see how the attacker happened. Or a lot of times it's a file or a directory that was dropped on a resource. It's like, oh, there's where the buffer overflow tool that actually caused the buffer overflow was stored. So you can identify that. Indicator of compromise, right? Well, at the end of your learning journey, you need an indicator of achievement. And that's what I call it, an indicator of compromise, but indicator of achievement. What do you have to prove that you know what you do? And you could say, well, I know what I do because I can talk to the person in the interview and I can go right into the details and hold my own and all that fun stuff. But when it comes to working through the resume tools that every major or even small institution has, yep. How does your resume get through using the right keywords and things like that? And they're looking for one form or the other of an indicator of achievement. And that could be certification. And it's basically a good shorthand that allows people to understand, hey, this person took the last step. And if curiosity, right, is one of the key skills. Yep. What is a better indicator of your curiosity, right? And a better indicator of your ability to work and play with people than certification, because it shows that you know how to complete things. It shows that you are ready in the mix, that you're willing to kind of submit, as it were, to a process. And all of those elements reflect a maturity. And I think even as much as curiosity, it's the level of maturity of the person that we're bringing in. They want to make sure that somebody has the ability to follow through, and certification is a real indicator of that.
Again, just sage advice, folks. Go get that indicator of achievement. Yeah. I want to see those posts on LinkedIn. I got my indicator of achievement in A+. I want to see those. Awesome, fantastic. All right, last question. We got some folks here doing some work, so make it a little loud. So I'll make this quick. I touched on it earlier. It happens. Yeah, it's everywhere right now around here. IT concepts are not easy to learn. We talked about it. And on this broadcast, we are always encouraging people to go use every resource possible to learn. Don't just learn at My Computer Career, as you talked about, go to your peers, etc. Are there any other resources you would recommend for learning concepts?
You know, there are various resources out there that can do more than just talking you through. There are a lot of people who can be talking heads, right, on the internet, and that's fine to learn the acronyms and things, but actually get things done. I mean, you can go to Hack the Box. You can go to all these different resources out there that have ready-made platforms so that you can go in and say, hey, I want to learn what it means to do a pen test, or what it means to listen to a pen test or to an attack and stop it. So I would do that. The other thing, if you don't want to do those things online, download VirtualBox, download some versions of Linux and Windows, and start throwing rocks at them. You know, use one thing to throw rocks at the other, as it were, and start learning that way. So there are plenty of online resources. There are plenty of offline resources that you can use.
Okay. All right. What did we miss?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Maybe do folks have some questions? What did we miss? First of all, keep on learning and keep on having fun. Find ways to have fun. And there are times when you have to take a step away from it. Just make sure you don't take too many steps away. And part of that means having a good network of learning and a good multiple ways. I call it multi-layer ways of learning. In other words, sometimes it's just great to read stuff. Sometimes to listen to a YouTube video or watch one. Other times, actually, you know, for me, it's I'll use the word kinesthetic. It's a fancy word for saying I like to work on stuff and get it right and get it wrong and learn that way. That's how I do it.
Okay. All right. I think that's an excellent spot to put a bow on this thing. Just so you know, Bruce in LinkedIn said, Bruce Ackerman, by the way, said, see you next week, James.
See you next week, Bruce. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, he is out there watching. Can't wait to see you.
It'll be fun, man.
And where can folks find more about CompTIA?
Go to explore.comptia.org. You can check that out, and you can basically answer some questions and start to investigate what it means to choose a career that works for you and which has people looking for you. In other words, you want to get educated into some form of demand, right? But you also want to make sure that you get educated in something that makes sense for you. So you go to CompTIA.org or explore.comptia.org to learn more.
Beautiful. And everybody in the audience, just so you know, our very own Candace Kaiser, who is an instructor teaching A+, who we've had on the program a couple of times. She's excellent. She has a study guide. For A+. So if you'd like the practice exam, just drop it in one of the chats. This will be on all of our channels even after we go live. So feel free to ask a question or request that, and we'd be happy to send it to you. And CompTIA has a lot of resources as well on their site, on your site.
Indeed, you could go to you could even go to cyberseek.org. That's a really cool website. It's US based. For those of you in Australia, there's AusCyber. It's basically the same thing. But even if you're outside the US, you can drill down and it shows you various job roles and who's hiring for them in real time. We've worked with NIST, the US NIST on this, and also Lightcast, a research outfit in CompTIA. And you can look for real-time information about job roles and who's hiring for them.
Beautiful. James, as always, thank you so much for your time. I know that it's been helpful for me, and I promise you it's been helpful for so many folks. So really appreciate the knowledge and just the wisdom to get us through this.
Thanks, man. Aaron, it's always great talking with you. I really appreciate your time, and looking forward to the next session, man.
We'll do it again, no doubt about it.
All right,
folks, just a little plug here. Next week is our graduation, one of our graduations. So on Saturday, we're going to celebrate 1,645 grads. And we're going to have a couple of those grads join us next week on this program to talk about their experience, and for all of us to just kind of say congratulations to them. So tune in if you want to learn about their experience, if you want to learn about the program, and learn about why they chose us and where they're heading next. So
that's so cool. Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah.
It's going to be a good one, man. It is, no doubt. All right, everyone. I will leave you with that. Have a wonderful Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. We will see you here again next week. James, our team will see you on Tuesday.
Yep.
And if you don't mind hanging around for just a second after we close.
Sure, no problem.
All right.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much. See you, everyone.